anabolic than testosterone milligram for milligram. Meaning, if we shoot 100 milligrams of Primo and 100 grams of testosterone, it will yield less effect on the muscle building factor. Before we start the video, guys, I gotta make this announcement. This is purely entertainment. It is not educational. I'm not a doctor. I'm not your doctor. You should see a physician, buy any kind of medical advice you want. You should see a professional. You shouldn't ask me. You shouldn't do what I do. This is just for entertainment. Whatever. Don't do what I do. Let's continue. What is up, guys? Today we are gonna take a look at the compound, the DHT derivative methenolone, also known as Primo or Primobolan. So now usually what I do here is that I pick out some studies and I have something to show you and explain how it works and whatnot. But since there aren't really any scientific studies on how Primo works on the hairline, we are going to do two things. We are gonna use first some anecdotal evidence. Anecdotal evidence is when it's passed by mouth or something someone has experienced, like a good story from somewhere. This could be something like a myth, like the decadic we know about. Now, there's no scientific evidence supporting how nandrolone is gonna make you get the decadic or whatever it's called. But it is still something that everyone is talking about and everyone is scared about, and you hear stories about how someone got the decadic or whatever happened when they took deca. This is what's called anecdotal evidence. Next, we are gonna do something called extrapolating. Now, extrapolating is a little bit different. It is when you have like a study saying that 1 liter of water is gonna weigh around 1 kilo. And then I found another study saying that water with some percentage of salt is gonna weigh 1.1 kilo per liter. Now, I can make an extrapolation and say that water with salt is heavier than water without salt, even though these are two separate studies. I can then extrapolate from them. So let's start out with the anecdotal evidence. Now, what I have here is a video, an experiment from someone named Dr. Tony Huge. Now, he isn't actually a doctor or anything, so don't be fooled by that. But he has a pretty interesting channel, and he is doing some experiments sometimes with some crazy SARMs, some crazy compounds, and some completely crazy dosages. So what he did here was that he took 1.5 grams of Primo weekly, and I don't know for how long, since I only found these clips around floating on the internet. It's because mostly Tony, his channel is getting shut down every time he starts a new one. Mostly because what he is doing is actually pretty dangerous and it's illegal, and he is promoting some pretty unhealthy ways to do stuff. But otherwise, it is pretty interesting.
Yeah? Here's the way I test hair loss when I shampoo my hair, because then the foam from the shampoo allows me to see the contrast of the hairs very easily. So as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, about 17 hairs that fell out from my head just from running my fingers through my hair, despite my hair growth protocol. So I'm definitely shedding a lot of hair on Primobolan. Back to SARMs, back to prioritizing health after the experiments I did, especially also for the hairline, since I didn't lose any hair on Proviron, Mastrone, or Winstrol. It was only the megadosing Primobolan that my hair started to fall out. I don't think I'll lose any hair on the SARMs. I did a long time ago when I first started taking the Rad 140, but again, I don't think it was the Rad 140 that directly caused the hair loss, or the S23. I think it was just that it made like energized and anxious, and I already have a lot of stress, so like adding to stress, and stress causes me more hair loss. And it depends a lot on where I am in life. Like, I'm in an environment that's a lot less stressful now. away with probably taking a lot more compounds that cause me anxiety without having the hair loss.
Now, as we saw in the video, I don't know if anyone figured this out, but 1.5 grams of Primo alone is a bad idea on so many levels. If we look past that, you can see that he actually did start to lose a lot of hair and pretty fast. So what he is saying is that it could have been because of some health issues, some stress or whatnot, and whatever he's saying, you can see he used Primo, he was losing hair at some point, and this is what I want to take from that only. The second thing we can do when we are gonna use anecdotal evidence is just take a look around the internet. The good old forums, they have a lot of stuff, and mostly what you see in there is people crying about having hair loss due to steroid usage, and usually they also cry about the Primo, and you can see that there are some evidence on guys losing hair on Primobolan. Second, let's take a look at the extrapolation part. Now, if you're not new to my channel, you know usually what I do when I evaluate some compound or whatever. I go really into detail on the androgenic weight. Now, the androgenic weight dictates how much androgen effect a compound will have. And if we split up the word, andro meaning man or male, whatever, and gen, well, genic is when it's genetics. So if we take a look at that word, most of us can come to the conclusion that we are talking about male characteristics, traits, or male traits, or androgen traits, or whatnot. Let's have a look at the word we usually use for hair loss, which is called androgen alopecia. While alopecia is of course hair loss, you can use other combination like traction alopecia, where it's because you're pulling the hair out of the roots. But androgen alopecia comes from the androgenic traits, and alopecia because men by genetics are programmed to just lose their hair at some point. Wow, okay, that was a lot of rambling just for that one word, but I hope you get the gist of it. So at this point, I got my phone ready. I have some data, some sheets here that I'm gonna share with you in here. So I wanna start out by showing you the data I have on methenolone or Primobolan or whatever we call it. And I want to compare it now to testosterone. Testosterone is a pretty good base to just figure out how strong something is compared to whatever you're using. So mostly what we can see here is that Primo is actually a little less anabolic than testosterone, milligram for milligram. Meaning, if we shoot 100 milligrams of Primo and 100 grams of testosterone, it will yield less effect on the muscle building factor. Now, what is interesting on this sheet is that Primo actually is about 50% less androgenic than testosterone. So I did some quick math here, and I come up with the solution that if I wanted my Primo to be as effective on the muscle building side as testosterone, I would have to shoot 1.2 milliliters of Primo to have it compared to 1.2 milliliters of testosterone if each were dosed at 100 milligrams for each milliliter. But what is really interesting here is that since Primo is only 50% the androgenic ratio of testosterone, it would mean that when I shoot 1.2 times as much Primo as testosterone, I would only have a 60% increase in my androgenic weight. Meaning, if we shoot the same amount or the same effective amount, I would have the same muscle building tissue effect, whatever we call it, but I will only have 60% of the hair loss factor going around in my bloodstream at this point. So let's go all the way back to the video with Tony Huge. Now, if we remember correctly, Tony did 1.5 grams of Primo, and if we were gonna say that we wanted the same effect or compared to testosterone, it would mean that you had to shoot 750 mg of testosterone to have the same androgenic response that he got. Not counting in the DHT and whatever factors there is, just this plain extrapolation. It's very simple, it's very basic, it's not fully precise, but it is gonna give you a good idea on how much he actually took and probably why he was losing his hair. So of course, this shows us that 750 mg of testosterone will probably make you lose hair at some point, and it will give the same androgenic ratio as 1.5 grams of Primobolan. So that is way too much if you don't want hair loss to occur. This doesn't mean that Primo isn't hair safe, but it doesn't mean that it is not hair safe. Meaning that Primo works in this way that if you shoot enough of it, you will have a high androgenic response, but at low dosages, let's say around 200 mg, it will actually only yield the same hair loss results more or less as 100 mg of testosterone if we look at the data from all the studies. So guys, take from that whatever you would like to. It is my basic take on Primo and how hair safe it is. Mostly, I like Primo, I really do, but compared to something like Winstrol or Turinabol, I think it is a little more on the unsafe side, for me at least, since I lost most of my hair at some point and I have to really fight to keep it back there. So I'm not gonna use Primo, but if you haven't screwed up like I did in the past and you have some leeway on the hair side, or if you don't think you're that prone to hair loss, it is definitely a good suggestion to take a look at. And with that said guys, until next time, cheers.